GraphQL API. It allows us to fetch data from WordPress sites. Now there are questions. What is GraphQL API? How is it different from REST? Why and how do we use it with WordPress? Now these questions we need somebody who works with GraphQL. Leonardo Losoviz says he works at the cross section of GraphQL and WordPress. Leo is an open source developer and freelance technical writer. He's got an ongoing quest to bring innovative paradigms to WordPress. Leo, we are all ears.
Hello, everybody. My name is Leonardo Losoviz, and I'm very happy, very excited to be here in WordCamp India 2021 to talk about GraphQL with WordPress. My talk is called Intro to the GraphQL API for WordPress. It's a plugin I'm going to be showing to you, but we're going to be talking about GraphQL first. So what is GraphQL? GraphQL is an API. It's a way to fetch data from your WordPress site. So right now you have the WP REST API. Possibly you already work with what is called the coupled WordPress or headless WordPress. So the idea is that you have a WordPress site, which is your backend, and maybe you have a client using, say, React or Vue, that you're rendering the view, which is not WordPress. It's something else, some other technology. But we need the data. We need to get all the posts, all the users, all the comments, and then to render that. So this is where GraphQL comes in. It's like REST, but different. The objective is the same. Give me the data. But what is different is how this is done. So this is what we're going to be looking at in just in a few moments through my plugin. Why my plugin? It's not the only one. So there are actually two plugins for WordPress. Sorry, for GraphQL in WordPress. The other one is WPGraphQL. You might have heard about it. You might be using it already. And here I am parachuting out of nowhere saying, hey, everybody, there's another option, which is called GraphQL API for WordPress. So why do we need another option? We're going to look at a demo right now. And I'm going to show you the features. Alongside talking about GraphQL, I will show you what other cool things you can do with it. And hopefully at the end of this presentation, you will say, hey, that's actually quite cool. I want to play with it. And then you download the plugin and you start playing with it. So I will talk a bit about the plugin, where do you download it, and which is the website. It is GraphQLAPI.com. I'm actually switching my tab to show you that website for 1 second. So this is it, GraphQLAPI.com. So if you go to the website, there is here a link download where you can download it, and there is a link GitHub. This is the open source repo. You can go, you can play with it, you can contribute if you want. Check it out, there is a lot. Now we're going to start with the demonstration of all the features that we have alongside playing with GraphQL. So this is my WordPress site. I have a local development server. That's why it says not secure. Please don't run away in panic. I'm just using this to play with it. And here I have this entry called GraphQL API. I'm going to click here. Let's see what happens. Yay, it's working. So what is this? So we're talking about GraphQL. GraphQL is data. It's a way to fetch data. Now, once again, we were talking about REST before. And when we're talking about REST, you don't see the data. You have to go to PHP and you have to code it. You have to code what is called an endpoint. Say WP JSON/v2/post, and then you get all the posts that you need. GraphQL works differently. The idea is here that you can use tools to interact with the data. So this tool that I'm showing you right now in this screen, this is called the graphical. It's a tool to interact with the service. In this case, with the GraphQL endpoint that we have in the backend. Here in this area, we will code the query. We can hide this for the time being. Then I will press this run button, and we will have the response in this area. And here we can also do the whole operation of writing the query manually. So what is this? Here we have posts. I click here, and you can see that when I click on posts, the query on this side has been updated. So now I can actually add content to my query. Actually, I will add, this is the field called content. I want to fetch the ID. I want to fetch the URL, and I want to fetch the title for all the posts in my website. I press run, and here we have, this is the response. So you can see this is a JSON with all the information for all the posts on my site, for all the fields that I have requested. You have the content, you have the ID, you have the URL, you have the title. And we can also nest information. So here I can code this, I can write it, the author, and I want the ID, and I want the name. Or once again, I can keep adding properties by clicking here. When I click, this is the response. Here I'm getting all the information. So welcome to GraphQL. GraphQL, it's an API to fetch data where you're composing the query, defining the fields that you need to fetch for all the entities that you need to fetch, your posts, your users, your comments, and the response will be exactly that. In this case, the response matches one-to-one with my query. We have all the posts. For each post, we have the field content, then we have the ID, then we have the URL, the title, then we have the author that I had requested here. The author, I wanted ID, here is ID, name, URL, exactly what I request. So how is this so awesome, if we can say that this is awesome? Because now with one single request, you can fetch all the data that you need to render all the elements in your page. So this is a big boost for performance. Now your website, mostly for mobile connections, can be much faster. In one single go, you're like, give me all the data. You have it all at once. You render it. Your users will be happy. Your website will be much faster. At the same time, the development experience is so awesome because now we are coding the query just by clicking on fields. I do this, click, 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 run. Custom post, I need to add something there. But anyway, this is a lot of power that we have at our hands. Let's continue watching the other tools that we can play with. We have something called interactive schema. What I have shown you so far is pure GraphQL, okay? But now also we are playing with the tools that we can attach to GraphQL. So this one is called the interactive schema, and basically what it is showing you all the data, all the entities that you have in your WordPress site. So think about WordPress. What is WordPress? WordPress is a content management system. So we are storing all the data in our database in a series of tables. We have WP posts, WP users, WP comments, and other tables. But we don't see that data, and then we actually go and explore the database. Here we can actually see the data. So we start with the query with the root. This is where we start composing our query, in the query root. What fields do we have? We have the posts, as we saw just now, or a post that we can get only one single one. We have the users or the user. We have pages. We have page count if we want to see how many pages we are retrieving, and many other fields. So in the case of post, for instance, here is saying that the field called post is retrieving an entity of the type post. And if I click here, it takes me to the entity called post, and it shows me all the properties that now I can select from it. I have the author, I have the comments, I have the feature image, I have the tags, does it have comments, how many comments it has, the date, excerpt, ID, Slack, and so on and so forth. So now if I want to see the tags, I click on the post tag element, and now it goes to this other entity. And it shows all the relationships. So once again, this is awesome to understand how your data is structured. Imagine that you have a custom post type in your website. Maybe you are creating your own plugin. and you have a custom post type called portfolio or product, and you want to see how it connects to the other entities in the WordPress site. Now you can see this visually. If there is something that is not right, if there is some connection that should not be there, you can say to that, and then you can actually fix it. So once again, this is a tool that you have available with GraphQL. It makes development of APIs a playful thing. You enjoy working with APIs. Now let's see what other features we can do with this. So before I will show you, I'll go back to the graphical for 1 second. So this is where we compose queries. I'll just click on the previous query that I had, maybe another one, and I click on run. This is executing a query against what is called a single endpoint. You basically have only one endpoint. You don't need to have multiple endpoints anymore. Think about REST. How do you call with REST? So that you have a REST endpoint with all the data for posts. And suddenly, out of nowhere, you need to fetch a new field that you didn't have before. What do you have to do? You need to create another endpoint. So this becomes bureaucratic. And you need to document the endpoints. Because, I mean, what is the difference between /posts and /post1 and /post2? It becomes tedious to use and to maintain. GraphQL, you're composing the query, and the query is basically what you need. So then there's only one single endpoint that is generally /GraphQL, and in that /GraphQL you fetch all the data that you need. At the same time, every field has some documentation. Content says custom post content, tile says custom post tile, and so on and so forth. So you don't need to document this anymore. Okay? So you have one single endpoint. But now for my plugin, for the GraphQL API for WordPress, I was thinking, okay, this is good, but it's not perfect because the single endpoint has problems. Which is the problem? First problem is that you cannot cache this content anymore. With REST, you're accessing all the content under its own endpoint, right? So if you have an endpoint called /post and you retrieve that on your web browser, the same URL will fetch the same results. So then you can cache that. But with GraphQL, because you have a single endpoint, which is /GraphQL, now you cannot cache that anymore. The same URL that you're calling will produce different results. And in that same aspect, you're calling them through post, not through get, through post. But I was thinking, that's not cool. I don't want to lose that capability of being able to cache my results. So now we're going to enter into the specific fields of how to improve the GraphQL API that I provide through the GraphQL API for WordPress, through my plugin. So if you see on the screen, it says persistent queries. What is a persistent query? Persistent queries are the union of GraphQL and REST. It's not a marriage. It's more of a monster of sorts. I don't like to call it like that, but that's what it is. You're using GraphQL to publish an endpoint as if it were REST. Let's do that as an exercise. We click here on the Add New GraphQL Persistent Query, and lo and behold, this is loading a WordPress editor screen. This is your usual friend called Gutenberg. So we add a tile. What is the tile for our endpoint or persistent query? Let's just call it user profile posts, because we want to fetch the data to get all the posts for a user and maybe some other information. So what we do, we compose the query just by clicking on the fields. We have a user. We will need an ID. For the time being, I will say ID 1. We will actually improve on this in a little while, but let's just say ID 1 for the time being. And for the user, I want to fetch the name, the URL. Let's start playing with it for the time being. I click on run. Here I have some information. And the website URL. And then I say that I wanted the post. Okay, so I click on post. And for each post, I will get the date, The date, we can give it some format. Let's just say day and month that we only want. And we also want the title, the URL, and the excerpt, because we're going to have a few of them. Actually, we don't want all of them. Okay, actually, let's click first. This is loading all the data. And here we have. So now this brought me all the data that I have requested. The name for the user, the URL, the website URL, and a list of posts. We don't want so many posts. We want to get only 2 elements because we're actually doing a widget. So we can filter this saying, let's take this out. There we go again. Limit 2. Now if I click again, we only got 2 elements. Perfect. This looks very nice. So this is what I showed you before, okay? Nothing new. This is still GraphQL as we saw it before. But now comes the magic. This is called user profile post. I will click on publish. This is a normal custom post type. I'm publishing this, and here I have it. I have published my CPT, which has URL, user profile post, and when I load this, this is fetching me the data that I have just requested. So what is this? This is an endpoint that you have created on the spot. This is like REST. You have published an endpoint, but the query came from using GraphQL. This is magic. This is awesome. So, benefits of doing this. First one is, this is being cached. Now, you're accessing this through a URL. So when you load this content again, it will be cached on your browser, on the CDN, or on the server, or maybe even on all 3 of them. This is using HTTP caching, which is a standard caching method. So now when you enter this endpoint on your website, you don't need to query your live server all the time. Maybe you do it the first time, and from then on, it's cached. So then once again, you're gaining performance because it's faster to access the cache, and you're reducing the load on your server. So this is only good news. So I said before, here we have the user with ID 1. That's not very nice, right? I mean, we cannot hard code that. So let's switch this, and we're going to use query variables instead. So I will format this. Instead of using 1 hard code, we say user ID. This is going to be a user variable. And we pass this user ID, which is of type ID. What this means is the variable of type ID, which is what is expected by this field ID here, as it is documented, the user ID. And this exclamation mark means it is mandatory. You need to provide it. So now if I run this query, it will give me an error saying, hey, come on, where is my user ID? You have to submit it. So we do that through query variables. Now, this is a JSON object, user ID, and now we can pass the value. I have one user with ID 1, so I pass this, and we have the results again. So now I'm going to update this. I update, and supposedly, they should still work the same way. Yes, it works. But now what we want to do is to be able to provide different IDs for different users. So if we scroll down, we see there is this field in the options. It says accept variables as URL params, and it says yes. Okay, I can edit this. No, yes. Okay, it's a yes. By default, it is yes. And what this does is to allow me to pass this variable as a URL param to the endpoint. So now that's what I will do. I will say and user ID, and I will say 2. That's another user. There we are. Now the user called John Watson with this different URL, and his post is being loaded. So this is just magic. You have on one side a REST endpoint of sorts that you have created using GraphQL, and that you can make it dynamic by providing parameters to customize the results in the query, in the response. This is the magic of GraphQL and WordPress. GraphQL is awesome. WordPress is awesome. When you put them together, it's, yeah, you have to play with this. And once you start playing with it, oh, yeah, leave. We don't want to save the changes. Once you start playing with it, you will not ever regret it. So here we have all the different ones that I have created. All of them have their own URLs. You create many of them for all of the different endpoints, and you are, and then you can have your website fast, performant, and it was very easy to code. I mentioned that you can cache all of this, and you can also provide access to different fields. So we have something called access control lists. I click here on the entry called access control list, and I can create different rules on who can access the information. So this is also another advantage over REST. In REST, what happens if you don't want somebody to access a field from the database? For instance, the email from the users. They have been a pain point for me. I didn't want my users on my website to be able to access a certain field. So how do I restrict that? I need to go to the documentation for the WP REST API and see how I turn that off. But what if I want a specific user or specific user with some capability or some role? It starts becoming tedious. Here we can select which fields will be available to every user based on role, capabilities, if the user is logged in or not. And that's what is called an access control list. So I have one created, it's called default access control. Yes, here we are. And the way that it works is the same as what we saw just now. This is a custom post type. It's operated via the WordPress editor. This is a normal Gutenberg screen, as you might identify it. And I'm going to create a new entry. If I'm not wrong, I believe that this query that I'm running is already using this default access control. So I'm going to add a new field here, a validation for a field, access control. So now I can select which fields will be validated. I have selected in my query the URL for the user. So let's just validate that, saying nobody can access that. So I say user. No, actually, let's say URL. Yeah, here we are. And now I can see all the fields. And here we are. Oh, website URL. I was actually loading that one. Now the website URL, I don't want anyone to access this. So who can access? Disable access. I don't want this anymore. Nobody. I will update this. Now, if I go back to my endpoint and I refresh this, we have here an error message. Access to fields website URL has been disabled, which means you cannot access it. But this is getting even more interesting. You can define what is the error message for the user. Can they see that they cannot access the field? Or they should not even see that the field exists in first place. So this is the difference between making the access public, as we saw just now, or private. I will make it private. So now I update this. And I go back to this screen and I refresh. Now it is giving me a different error message. No field resolver results field website URL for type user. This is saying, look, I mean, this field that you are trying to query does not exist. Okay. So what is the idea here? The idea is that you can have a single source of truth for all of your data, including the data for yourself, for your clients, your users, your pro users, and whoever else, and then you can create configuration on who can access this. Let's do that. Instead of saying nobody, we will change this. I will delete this nobody, and I will create a different rule. Let's do it by user roles. In this current screen, I am logged in as the administrator. So now I'm going to say the administrator can access this field. I will update. Now, if I refresh here, now I can access this screen again because I am the admin. I will change this, not the admin. I want the editor to access this, or the author. I don't have any of these roles. So I update, and when I go back and I refresh, now it says once again, you cannot access this information. So you can validate access by saying, only this person, this role, this somebody can access. Your client can access, your pro user can access, and nobody else can access. And once again, how have we done this? You click and you select all the fields. This field, this field, this field, this field. And then you click on update and you're done. It's very easy. You're managing your API just by clicking on elements. So this is the magic of GraphQL. This is the magic of my plugin called GraphQL API for WordPress, which is trying to make the most out of GraphQL and WordPress. What I have shown you are the most important features. How you can query access, how can you query the data from your site? How you can create a persistent query, which is like REST. How you can cache, or actually how you can access the data through the URL, so then it will become cached, and how you can provide access control, so you can define who can access the data. The plugin has a lot more things going on. It has custom endpoints, so you can create different endpoints for different users, for different applications, for different teams in your organization. You can define the cache control, how long it's going to be, the time that it has to be cached on a field-by-field basis. You can deprecate fields, and then there are many more available features that I'm providing. If you click on the modules, you will have this screen. It's very long because I'm working hard on making it as powerful as we can. You have mutations here, you have the graphical explorer, you have nested mutations, you have multiple query execution. There's a lot of stuff going here. So I'm going to invite you to check it out. This is open source. You can download it. There is no cost to using it, downloading, play with it, and if you like it, you can even contribute. So the URL for the website is GraphQLAPI.com. It is this nice looking website. Go to the download link here, click on download, check it out, and then let me know how it goes. I'm always available. You can find me on my website, which is leoloso.com. You can find me on Twitter, on Losoviz. It's like my surname, Leonardo Losoviz. My Twitter handle is Losoviz. And so I get so excited with these things. So just ping me straight there and tell me what you're doing with it, what you're building with it. Show me how this can be part of your application. I really get very excited with this. And yeah, this is the end of my presentation. I hope that it has been useful. I hope that you have learned about GraphQL. I thought that if you're using the couple WordPress, if you're using headless WordPress, you can see a new method of accessing the data. You can actually have new ideas. Maybe you can do something that you thought you couldn't do in the past. And maybe you are building something awesome that benefits everyone in the community. If that's what happened, I will be very happy that I have provided this presentation and that you have been there watching it. And yes, now I will be open for the Q&A. Thanks so much for having me.